Errol Russell.
I beg leave to ask my question as set out on the order paper.
More seriously, the Government published its report to the Climate Change Committee's latest progress report in December of last year. The response is clear that we recognise a role for airport expansion where it provides economic growth and is compatible with our net zero target and strict environmental standards. As part of the airport's National Policy Statement review, referred to by the Chancellor in her recent statement, we will engage with stakeholders on how aviation expansion can be made consistent with our net zero framework.
This level of airport expansion is always going to be incompatible with our climate change commitments. It would undo all our work on climate change in under 5 years. When just 15% of the population are responsible for 70% of all the flights, government must do more to curb demand. No economy in the world has grown from building runways alone. Meanwhile, in 2024, the green economy grew by 10%, adding 83 billion. Does the Minister agree what is needed more than anything else is clear and consistent government policies on climate change and green growth, not this damaging policy confusion?
I certainly don't agree with the Noble Lord's assertion about the incompatibility of this. The Government has been clear that any airport expansion proposals need to demonstrate that they contribute to economic growth, can be delivered in line with the UK's legally binding climate change commitments and meet strict environmental requirements on air quality and noise pollution. The work of the Department has shown that we can achieve aviation net zero by 2050 under a range of assumptions about future technology development without the Government needing to intervene directly to limit airport expansion.
When it comes to airport expansion and more flights, one of the key measures that can be used to reduce emissions is increased use of sustainable aviation fuels. Now, I welcome the SAF mandate, but it's also incredibly important when it comes to job creation and energy security that the SAF that we are using in the UK is manufactured in the UK. So could the Noble Lord the Minister set out what plans the government has to support SAF production in the UK? And could he also tell me specifically, under those plans, by 2030, how many jobs does he expect to be created in that sector?
The Noble Lord is right that sustainable aviation fuel is really important in reducing the carbon footprint of air traffic, and this government has taken forward both the SAF mandate, which came into force in January, which progressively increases the percentage of jet fuel, sustainable jet fuel, from this year onwards. And it's also important, as the Noble Lord says, that the UK is a supplier, and the actions of the government are in order to make sure that there are jobs in Britain, and Britain is a leading supplier of this. On the 29th of January, the government announced £63 million worth of funding for the Advanced Fuels Fund in the next financial year, and that will support SAF producers based across the United Kingdom. I don't have a jobs figure to hand for SAF, but I'll very willingly write to the Noble Lord and tell him what we know about it.
My Lords, my Lords, my Lords.
On the subject of airport expansion, of course, there are airports around the country that are under capacity currently, including Cardiff Airport. What consideration has the government given to working with the Welsh Government on driving more business in the direction of airports like Cardiff Airport?
The government recognises the importance of regional airports. I don't have in front of me what the government is doing about the expansion of Cardiff, but I'll very willingly write to my noble friend and tell him exactly what we know about Cardiff's expansion and the government's role in helping it.
My Lords, my Lords, my Lords, when we did the Airports Commission review, the UK's 2050 target was only an 80% emissions reduction. Yet the third runway at Heathrow still required reduced growth at regional airports to keep within our carbon budgets. Has this analysis been redone, and are the conclusions the same? And indeed, shouldn't we wait for the 7th carbon budget, which is being published tomorrow?
I stand by the earlier figures that I said about achieving aviation net zero in 2050. Of course, the Noble Baroness is right that tomorrow the 7th report is published. But what I would say is that actually the proposals from Heathrow or any other promoters' proposals for a third runway have not yet been received. They'll have to be followed by an application for a development consent order, which will have to be properly processed. So it's not incompatible with the forthcoming publication for the Chancellor to express her enthusiasm for a third runway and the economic growth that it will produce.
My Lords, by the year 2040, aviation is going to be 27% of the UK's carbon emissions. And given that most people in Britain, in fact in the world, don't actually get onto a flight in any given year, isn't it time to see that aviation is a luxury, not a human right, and we should bring in a frequent flyer levy?
Whilst I respect the Noble Baroness's view, the fact remains that a decent analysis suggests that a third runway will create economic growth of measurable proportions to the British economy, and this government is extraordinarily keen on economic growth for the obvious reason that actually the legacy of the previous government left the economy in a really bad place. So actually what we need to do is to use every means we've got of economic growth to grow the economy and make the country more prosperous.
My Lords, when the Heathrow was previously promoting this airport some 8 or 9 years ago, the estimated cost was £18 billion. This cost will fall because of the regulated asset-based model on which it is funded. This cost will fall on the airlines and then further, consequently, on the passengers of airlines. Shouldn't the government be consulting passengers about whether they want this runway as much as anything else? What plans does the government have to consult them and indeed the airlines?
As soon as the Noble Lord got up, it reminded me that he was one of the principal promoters of the Thames Estuary Airport, which was a very innovative and brave proposal, but would have cost the country far more than the figures that he's quoting for the expansion of Heathrow. I think what we have to do is to wait for the proposals from Heathrow or any other promoter for the third runway, see what they look like, and then see what the application for a DCO actually consists of, how much it's said to cost, and what else needs to be done in order to achieve it. That will clearly be work in progress, considering that actually a proposal will only be expected early in the summer.
And the Minister referred to it a moment ago, based his pronouncements on Heathrow on a report by Frontier Economics. But I recognise the key graph. It looks like a forecast for high demand for air travel, which is then met by Heathrow Runway 3. But it's actually a graph of how much more air travel could be induced by Runway 3 if accompanied by an aggressive marketing strategy. How does a strategy based on inducing more air travel fit with the government's statements on climate change?
Yeah. So the next process is that the government is committed to reviewing the airport's national policy statement, which is a government action, and then, as I say, receive proposals from Heathrow or any other promoter about a third runway this summer, followed by an application for a development consent order. The matters that the Noble Baroness refers to will be set out, no doubt, in Heathrow's or any other promoter's proposals, and then set out in detail in the DCO. And I think we have to wait till then to see what they say about the demand, how it should be paid for, which was the subject of the previous question, and the government's view about what it will do with the economy.
Major changes to large airports. Will the government take into account the needs of smaller aircraft, like air taxis, which are very often subject to changes in wind speed and direction, for example?
I can't say whether or not a third runway at Heathrow will materially affect the ability of the airport to accept air taxis. There clearly is a limit to what size of aircraft can be landed not only at the moment but in the future, but we'll bear the Noble Lord's suggestion in mind.
I know that the Noble Lord the Minister is a great supporter of UK connectivity, and indeed I would recommend his report on the same to the House. Given that that is the case, could he confirm that for some of us flight is essential?
I thank the Noble Baroness, and she'll know that I spent a very large proportion of lockdown looking at the connectivity of the United Kingdom, and I entirely agree with her that actually the economy of Northern Ireland is utterly dependent on good flights to and from London and other places in mainland Britain. One of the opportunities that a third runway would give is better connectivity to Heathrow, the UK's only hub airport, especially from Northern Ireland but also other places in Scotland, in order to make that economy grow as well as mainland Britain's economy.